Okay. Well, thank you, and thank you for joining us. I am Diane Rosenbaum, the Senate Majority Leader, and we are here today to release the Senate Democrats' agenda for the 2013 legislative session. And with me, and who you'll be hearing from shortly, are two members of our leadership, Senator Arnie Roblin and Senator Alan Bates. And then we also have two Oregonians who will be talking about their own experiences and how that relates to some of our proposals that we'll talk about. The agenda that we have put together reflects the priorities that we have been hearing about for months from real Oregonians, and that includes parents, small business owners, students, and people that are still trying to find a job or keep a job in this struggling and recovering economy. So our priorities include investing in good public education for Oregon students, helping our small businesses to be able to stay in business and expand by providing increased economic development tools, and standing up for middle-class families across the state of Oregon. This agenda highlights legislative actions and policies for people from Brookings to Joseph and Hillsborough and Salem and everywhere in between. We're going to be hearing from Senator Roblin, who's a new senator, about his committee, which is the Committee on Rural Communities and Economic Development, and some of the work that they'll be doing. The document that we're releasing today represents the vision that we have for the future of the state of Oregon. We think that these are concrete policy proposals that not only reflect the priorities of Oregonians, but these are achievable proposals that we will be able to work on and actually pass during the 2013 session. I want to just highlight a couple of the areas that we are working on before I turn it over to some of our other speakers. First, we are really putting a strong emphasis on investing in public schools and in skills training for the jobs of the 21st century. We want to be able to make progress on keeping teachers in the classroom, on the things that we have heard from so many Oregonians, that they want smaller class sizes, they want teachers in the classroom, and they don't want to see teachers being laid off. And at a town hall recently, we had over 350 people, primarily from the district that I represent in Clackamas County and Multnomah County, but we think that the same priorities are shared by Oregonians statewide. And those folks were talking about exactly what we're here to talk about today: increased access to education. In addition to that, we will be proposing that we build on and add to some of the career training programs that we have been working on and are already starting to be heard today. We're going to have proposals to help small businesses put people back on the job. We're increasing access to capital. We're increasing the availability of industrial lands for businesses that want to be able to have sites to grow and expand. And we're streamlining the state's economic development programs, because that is what we've been hearing from small businesses that they need in order to be able to thrive. And finally, we know that we need to strengthen Oregon's workforce. That is crucial both for the young people who need the jobs of the future and need to get trained for those jobs. But in addition to that, it's going to help the fabric of our economy and for those businesses that need to be able to hire people that have the skills they need to be able to put them to work immediately. So those are some of the things that we're working on. We are very much looking forward to telling you about a few of our other priorities and then opening it up for questions at the end. At this point, I want to introduce a parent. Her name is Nina Carlson. She's from Hillsborough. She has a son whose name is Bjorn, who goes to school in Hillsborough. And Nina is going to talk a little bit about her experience in the schools and her hopes for Bjorn and his future in the education system in Oregon. Nina.
Well, I just wanted to thank the senators for having me here today and for their focus on the public education system. I'm a resident of Hillsborough, like the senator mentioned, and I have a unique experience. My son goes to the same grade school that I went to, so I can appreciate his experience that he has today versus what I remember my experiences being. And I'm also a member of the budget committee for Hillsborough School District, so I get a real insight look of what our district is faced with numbers-wise and what programs are either funded or cut due to the budget constraints. We've seen the last few bienniums major disinvestment in education. The percentage of general fund dollars going to our schools is getting smaller, while we are still having more students with tougher standards and more mandates that they have to comply with. This budget stress has caused a lot of districts to have to cut important classes that kids want and teachers know that they need. Many of our high schools, the high demand classes, your upper level maths, languages, sciences especially, will often have 40 kids in a classroom designed not to hold even that many desks. Kids are being turned away from classes because they physically don't have room for them, and teachers know that they need these classes to be prepared to do well in college. In classes this large, teachers, which data and our daily experience shows to be a very important measure of student success, teachers are being able to spend a minute or two with each student. They're not able to really effectively engage with them or have the time to make sure that they are getting all the information they need out of that class. I do appreciate the senators' focus on education. We need to help our districts be able to invest, be able to offer more than one language, offer multiple sets of science classes, the higher level, biochemistry, physics, so our kids are ready to succeed in college. We need to be able to allow our districts to have the money to hire teachers and have smaller class sizes and afford staff to assist students to negotiate what comes next, whether it be career or technical training, getting into an internship, or finding scholarships so they can pay for college today. I just really appreciate you guys and the focus you have on education. We can do better for our students today, and this seems like a step in the right direction, giving the districts the resources they need to effectively staff their schools and make strategic investments for student success.
And I'm Arnie Roblin, and I want to thank Nina for being here today and really expressing clearly and I think succinctly the opinions of parents throughout Oregon, from the north to the south, to the east to the west, and the coast where I come from. And I think most people know I was a principal and a teacher most of my previous career before I got into the politics. And that concern about class sizes and about courses offered are the same concerns heard from parents throughout our state. And one of the things that's been exciting to me as I moved into the Senate here was that the President saw fit to align part of the agenda you'll see today with fixing our rural economy. And so I am now the chair of the newly formed committee on rural communities and economic development. And we're really looking forward to helping spread, as the economy comes back, that economy to the entire state of Oregon, including those rural areas that so desperately need the jobs that make communities, that foster the schools, and make complete, healthy communities. And I look forward to doing that. I look forward to working with my colleagues in the Senate and the House to propose legislation that will improve the opportunities for small businesses in those areas and to make sure that the land base that's necessary for economic development is there and ready in the future. And so it is truly a pleasure of mine, having been in education for so long, to introduce our next speaker. And she is Sarah Catherine, a student at WSU, who is here to talk and say a few words about what it's like to be a student in today's environment and what we can do there. So thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Catherine. I grew up in the always exciting town of Boring, Oregon, and I graduated from Sandy High School. I'm currently a senior and a communications major at Western Oregon University in Monmouth. When I first heard of the priorities on the Senate Democrats' 2013 legislative agenda, I was thrilled at the emphasis being placed on education for all Oregonians. We all see the problems in education today: high costs with limited job-ready training and little college credit for college-level work in high school. Students need access to the education and training necessary for a stronger tomorrow. I'm proud to stand here with leaders who will work to fix the education crisis in our state. Senator Diane Rosenbaum and state Democrats know this fundamental truth. We can get Oregonians back to work by reinvesting in K-12 and post-secondary education and by developing a trained workforce. The Senate Democrats' emphasis on helping high school students get a head start on college-level classes with college credit is right on. I took AP English at Sandy High School, and it would have been so helpful if that course would have been eligible to receive college credit. This approach makes college more affordable, more accessible, and more doable for so many Oregonians like myself. Expanding career training opportunities also opens the door for more growth across the state. As I look towards graduation and prepare to enter the workforce, learning job-ready skills will help me get my foot in the door and will help Oregon businesses hire well-qualified and trained workers. As a student, I fully support the Senate Democrats' agenda and look forward to the ways the 2013 priorities will help students and small businesses across this beautiful state of Oregon. Thank you.
Well, good morning, and I want to thank the press for being here. We do appreciate taking the time to listen to us. A lot of people in the state don't think what we do up here is that important sometimes. It probably isn't, but it is important. It affects our lives every day, and you're our means of getting that message out, so thank you. I also want to thank Sarah and Nina for coming down here. We do appreciate taking your time to come down and spend some time with us, and hopefully the rest of the day, too. So thank you. We've got a great staff. They gave me talking points, and I'm going to go off those talking points and just kind of tell you the way I see it. And I'll probably be asked to leave the stage immediately, but I want to talk to you about it. I'm a primary care physician, a family doc down in Southern Oregon. I see about 25 patients a day, 5 days a week. And for the last 3 or 4 years, the conversations, those patient care rooms, have been entirely different than they were prior to that. We take care of their medical needs, but invariably, people in my practice start talking about 3 things. They're worried about their job. They're worried they've lost their job. They're worried about getting a job back. They're worried they're going to lose their job in the near future. I hear that from almost every single patient. And even those that have jobs are worried. And as the economy is slowly coming back, they're seeing a little light out there, but not much. So jobs are still number 1 in my practice and in Southern Oregon. Number 2, these same people are fearful of losing their houses. Some of them are on short sales or foreclosures. They're trying to hold on to their homes. And some of the things we're going to try to do in the Senate and in the House this year are going to try to help them stay in their homes and keep those homes. It's still a huge problem. And third, and probably most important, they talk to me about education for their children. They're worried about how big the classroom sizes are in their junior high schools and their high schools. They're worried about what it looks like in the grade schools. They don't know how they're going to send their kids on to higher education because of the cost of doing that. So the agenda you see before you, from my point of view, addresses those 3 issues. We're going to do everything we can to bring the jobs back into Oregon. We're seeing some upticks there. We need to do more. As far as home foreclosures are concerned, we have several bills that are going to be out on the floor here in the next few weeks that I think are going to help that also. And we are dedicated to putting seriously more money back into education, K-12, higher ed, and from my point of view, most importantly, in pre-kindergarten and programs that can really prepare very young children to be successful in our schools. And I'm going to stop there and ask the Senate Majority Leader, Senator Diane Rosenbaum, to come up and take questions.
Thank you, Senator Bates, Senator Roplin. Thank you, Nina, and thank you, Sarah. And we would be happy to answer questions about anything in our agenda.
How much would, a lot of discussion about reinvesting in public education, how much is the right amount? How much would you like to see for K-12 and for higher ed?
Well, it's very hard to stand here today and talk about a specific number in the budget. As you know, today was the first day that our budget committee, the Joint Committee on Ways and Means, met earlier this morning. But it is true that the co-chairs of the Budget Committee, Senator Richard Devlin and Representative Peter Buckley, are working on a legislative budget proposal. I expect that to be ready at the end of February, and certainly a lot of the emphasis that we have put today on public education we expect to be reflected in their budget, which will be the starting place for the legislature's budget discussions.
So does the emphasis on funding education mean that you're going to support the governor's PERS reforms, since those are linked in his proposed budget anyway?
Well, there's no doubt that that connection has been made, and I think that it is fair to say that there will be legislation dealing with PERS in the 2013 session. I think that any PERS proposal needs to be able to reap savings that can be used for education and other critical priorities of Oregonians. It also needs to be fair, and it also needs to be legal. And so those are the principles that we'll be using as we move forward on considering proposals to deal with the public employee retirement system.
Can you give us any more specifics of where you're going to look to find more money for K-12?
I think that there are a number of places that we'll be looking, and all of these will be in play. I, as a new member of the Revenue Committee and the Joint Committee on Tax Credits, will be looking with a very sharp pencil and a green eye shade at all of the tax expenditures to make sure that they're fulfilling their purpose. We'll be looking at whether we're reflecting the priorities of Oregonians as we spend those tax dollars. We'll be looking in terms of the agency budgets at the most efficient and cost-effective ways to approve those budgets so that we are saving every penny that we can on things that could be done more efficiently, and making sure that we direct those savings to be able to fund education and the other critical needs we've talked about.
Any specific tax expenditures that you have your eye on at this point?
Certainly, there are a number of those. The ones which are sunsetted and up for review this year are the starting place for the Joint Tax Credit Committee. The senior medical deduction has certainly been talked about, and I think there are a number of others that will be under review. So,
Senior, would you support getting rid of the senior medical deduction?
I don't think really getting rid of the senior medical deduction is what anybody has proposed, but I think looking at whether it could be modified in ways so that the relief that it provides is directed at middle-class Oregonians and not necessarily money that doesn't need to be spent for people that could easily afford to do without it. So I think it's more a question of evaluating it in terms of whether the relief it gives is directed at the right place.
Can you elaborate on how you plan to increase capital to small businesses and what sort of economic development tools you plan to introduce?
Sure. So in previous sessions, we've actually created and strengthened loan programs that the state administers for small business. And I think this year in 2013, we've been working a lot with the state treasurer on the Oregon Investment Act, on taking some of those programs that are housed in a lot of different agencies and places and being able to pull them together so they're more easily accessible to small business. And so I think being able to have kind of a one-stop shop to be able to take advantage of what we've got, and then looking at whether we have the ability to work with private resources and leverage some of those too, or some of the places we'll be going.
When do you know what PERS reforms are legal?
Well, that's a tough question. I suppose when you ultimately know what's legal is when things are appealed to our state courts and they're either rejected or upheld. I think, speaking for myself as one senator, I look to our legislative council, which is the legislature's lawyers. I look to the state attorney general to opine on what they think the likely future proposals are. Obviously, nobody has a crystal ball to be able to look down the street and know exactly what the courts will ever say, but I think, we do have decisions in the past. We do have the benefit of some of the finest legal minds in the state to be able to advise us, so that's where I would be looking.
Have you asked for an opinion from either the council's office or the AG?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, we ask for opinions from legislative council on a regular basis.
Have they come out with them? Have they given you one?
I've seen opinions, yes. I don't know. I have not seen any opinions from the Attorney General.
Setting aside the legality issue, does the COLA proposal, does that meet the other tests of raising money and being fair in your eyes?
I think there are differences of opinion about that. So I think it's early days to be able to say whether specific proposals can meet that test of fairness.
The governor's budget has a 7% increase for the OUS system, but he keeps research funding for the experiment station, ag experiment station, except the statewide flat. And there's a lot of concern out there in the farm community about that. Is there a, can you, I don't know if you can address, what you plan to do about that, but if you can at least kind of refer to it in terms of how you gauge the importance of research to the farm economy and thus the economy of the state.
I don't know whether that's something Senator Roebelin might want to tackle.
It was a great question. Today at 3 o'clock, come and hear testimony from President Ray and the different parts, because in our rural Communities and Economic Development Committee, we are having some information about that, because having been held steady, I believe it should have been increased. I think we've cut it in the last few years, and it has been an important engine in the economy of our state for years. And I think today you'll get to hear some information in that committee about it, and we'll have conversations, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that today. So. Thanks.
Beyond, also for you, Senator Roebelin, beyond leaning on the federal government, what do you see the state's role being in increasing harvesting on federal land?
Well, we will, again, have some conversations. I've talked to my committee members about the ONC land and the proposals. There's no real legislation yet that have been proposed by our three congressmen, Walden, DeFazio, and Schrader. And the governor had a task force that's been working. We're waiting patiently to hear what his opinion is of that group that got together, and then we'll look and see, can we support those efforts by legislation here that just encourages it. I think we also need to talk to people. Senator Wyden's in a very, very important place in his committee assignments to make that important for the Senate. We have to have conversations with our senators and our other delegation to make sure that it's important. If you really understand the whole idea of our ONC lands, it's an amazing thing, but the issue that really resides there is that it's almost exclusively Oregon. In fact, ONC is only in Oregon. And we have to have real conversations with our environmental people to get back in those forests and start both harvesting and thinning and keeping that investment what it should be, which is a healthy forest in the best timber area in the world. And we have a lot of opportunity there. We just need to have the conversations that show people we want that to be a sustainable place. We all in the rural areas love our forests. I mean, that's one of the reasons we live where we live, and we don't want to do harm as well. And so there are ways of doing that. There's new techniques that would make it possible to have that boom that we had in the 60s and 70s in a different way that provide jobs and work. And I think that's a big part of the whole conversation here. One of the ways we get money to reinvest in education is by getting jobs back and having the income taxes improve because of the jobs and the stuff that would be available to us.
And while you're up, if I can ask, this might be a stretch to go to immigration reform from strengthening the job market, but is that something that you're looking at, making it easier to get a driver's license, for instance?
We've had a lot of conversations about that. From my perspective, and I haven't seen any bills yet that are coming that way. It is really important to support the efforts that are happening at the federal level, because this is a problem that's bigger than Oregon. I think Oregon needs to continue to have the conversations, and I will certainly work with my farmers, the people that are in nurseries and all those others who have talked repeatedly about making sure that people who are working in our industry can do so in a legal, above-board way where they're paying taxes and doing things, and we need to have those conversations.
So as far as job creation goes, the Republicans are really pushing the idea of extending the tax policy encoded in the Nike bill to smaller businesses and a lot more of them. Ideally, I think for them, all businesses. So what are your thoughts on that idea, extending those policies?
Well, I think we're certainly supportive of looking at the whole picture for small businesses. I think it's important to remember that in the case of the single sales factor, that isn't actually the method of taxation that is used for most small businesses in Oregon. So I think that proposal would need a little more practical evaluation, because it's just not necessarily what we're hearing from small businesses about what they would want to see. So, but I think it's the second day of the legislative session, so obviously I think a number of these proposals are going to get worked through committee, and we'll see.
What have they said that they want to see small businesses in particular?
I think that the primary thing that we've heard from small business is including access to capital to be able to stay in business and expand. That's one that is very solidly addressed by small businesses, I think, throughout the state. Another would be being able to navigate a complicated system, because we've got a large state with a lot of agencies, and small businesses don't have necessarily somebody there in charge of just combing the websites and the programs. They need to have a readily available resource to say, this is what you qualify for, this is what you can apply for. That's what some of our small business development centers actually are providing, and I think there are a number of proposals this session to use that kind of one-stop shop approach to help them.
With the litigation around the single sales factor and the multi-state tax compact, are you hearing any discussion of altering those laws in any way at this point, separate from the Nike tax guarantee issue, but the actual underlying tax policy?
Honestly, I've not heard discussion about that. It's not to say it's not out there, but I haven't heard it. Okay,
Yeah,
I think one more question.
Gun control is a big topic on people's mind these days, and there's a bill in the Senate to limit the size of magazines that could be sold, I guess. What do you expect that to go through the Senate and pass, or where do you expect that to go?
Well, I think that it's certainly still fresh in everyone's memory that we have had incidents of gun violence both here in Oregon and nationally. I think that what we as a group of legislators will be doing is considering ways to prevent gun violence while still being respectful of the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding gun owners. I think it's hard to say what specific proposals will meet that test, but that is definitely what we will be looking at, and I'm sure those bills will get hearings, and I think it is an important problem, and it's a balancing. So,
is there any other bills that are going to address the issue?
I assume there are several bills that would be addressing both mental health, which is something that I think increasingly we're talking about, trying to provide additional mental health services both at a state and a local level, and certainly some of the bills that you spoke of. I imagine there will be others that will be introduced.
Are you? Can you? What would you tell the public about working on these things and working on that problem? I mean, is something going to be done here, or is it just going to take more time, or is there too much resistance to doing anything with gun legislation?
I think it's important to keep our children safe. That's critical. It's also important to respect the rights of law-abiding gun owners. I believe that we'll be able to do both of those things in the 2013 session. And I think we need to go to the floor. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.